Welcome to the Inside Out podcast. I'm Michelle, a life designer coach, nutritional therapist, leader in Run Fitness, and a host of the Inside Out podcast, bringing wisdom and experiences from inspirational people, fellow entrepreneurs, and from within my own life journey, supporting you around the globe to elevate your health and well-being and achieve the life you want to achieve. This week, I have sincere gratitude to have the opportunity to talk to Francesca. Francesca is a feminine freedom healer and combines several energy healing modalities to fully awake our inner feminine. As we all experience the fast pace of life, where focus is leading the way forward and doing, this may feel to you a bit inauthentic as we're eliminating the importance and focusing on just being. Francesca will talk us through how shamanic healing, and you have to correct me if I haven't said that right, and by reconnecting with our divine feminine, how we can all feel free, balanced, and live in an authentic life. So without further ado, please could we welcome Francesca to the show.
Hello, Michelle. Thank you so much for that introduction. That was beautifully said, and shamanic healing.
I will get used to these words when I'm talking to my guests. So I've had quite a few different things. So I suppose just for our listeners, can you share a bit more about your background and your journey into the feminine healing and what inspired you to become a sound healer?
It's such an intricate question, that one. And there's so many avenues that I could really go down to explore where and what took me. But really, what I want to share on that point is that our life, no matter what you move through, and it's moving through in a spiral, it's always talking to you, it's always speaking to you. It's whether at points you're able to listen and follow or not. And when I have got to where I am today, I look back and I'm like, well, of course this is going to be transpired, because I'm looking at my childhood. I looked what I used to like as a child, and herbs was a very big part of like creating concoctions and working with the nature. And so what really led me to where I am today was actually a tea business that I started. And it reconnected me back to that innocence of the inner child that loved creating these teas and herbal concoctions. And then in that, connecting back to my roots, to the earth, to a child of the earth, to a child of the cosmos, and then started to get me into the shamanic teachings. That really has been a journey of remembrance, and a journey that I like to activate within others, to remember their experiences both in this lifetime and others, to bring more of who they are into the now. And how that links into the divine feminine. Well, of course, the earth is the divine feminine, and it's about rerouting back to our humanness. There is a lot of focus and indoctrination that has happened to have the focus be on the outside, and that everything is received externally. Love is received externally. We connect to God, who is outside of us, right? And when we're bringing and working and weaving in with the divine feminine, it reminds us of who we are within. What are we within? And this beautiful the wholeness of who we are, which is both divine and human. So it's kind of this bridge, and this is how shamanic work is also is very linked to that teaching. The wholeness, it's always about bringing us into a sense of wholeness wherever we feel the inner divide that is created through the ego. And I'm going off on a tangent, but to answer that question, it's what we're all awakening to, let's put it that way.
Which is quite actually interesting, because when we talk about people and purpose, so we're all put on the planet for a purpose, and some of us really home in on our feminine and masculine and find out what our purpose is. And actually what you said, and I really like to hone in on for the our listeners, is, and it was something that was asked to me. They said, what did you enjoy doing as a child? And I had a traumatic childhood, and I was like, well, I don't know. And then it just triggered to me now. I like being out in the outdoors and in nature.
Mhm.
And I always liked entertaining people
Mhm.
and, talking to people or cooking for people. And subsequently, it's only now talking to you that I've gone, oh, right. So, yeah, I'm an athlete. I do like cooking. Teach my kids how to cook. And one of my biggest passions is to teach people how to cook and eat healthily.
Mm.
And, the benefits of doing that. And then looking at you yourself holistically to go, how can you best serve yourself? And I think we would just pause for a reflection, certainly
Mm.
listening to your story is the biggest question for our listeners should be, what did you enjoy doing as a child? And just really take a moment after listening to the rest of the show just to go, what does that look like for you? And is what you're currently doing as an adult reflecting what you did as a child? Because it's amazing just listening to you of how you brought that back and really taking that on board. And it's that pause and reflection of what is my inner child? What do I love?
Yeah.
So I'm quite intrigued. What sort of training and certifications did you have to undertake?
Mhm. So, as I mentioned, it was a process of remembrance, but I kind of followed the thread that took me into different areas. So, I did undertake my shamanic practitioner training course, and I did that in Wales because I'm half Welsh and I wanted to be on the land. And because also a big part of the remembrance and activating parts of self is for me was going to sacred lands. So, and being there, meditating on the land and receiving the codes that every sacred place holds. So when I did my shamanic training, but what I loved about that particular training was that it didn't take me down any particular lineage. It was very open to the understanding of shamanic throughout the cultures, shamanic work in relation to it being the ancientest form of healing through indigenous tribes. This is what all of us hold within our ancestry, within our DNA, is the medicine women, the community styled living, the indigenous healing modalities that shamanism hold. And that's actually all over the world, right? So the training I went down was so beautifully broad like that. And that really worked for me as an individual because I see everything as one, and it really allowed me to connect different cultures and how everything actually really is the same, right? Mm-hmm. And so I loved that aspect. So I did that. It was a year training. And within that, there was techniques that were taught on how to go on specific journeys and ultimately like soul retrieval, the power retrieval, ancestral healing, and all of these healings that kind of make up what is needed to come into wholeness, right? So I can talk a little bit about how shamanic healing works and what we see, because often, someone will come to me and say, oh, I want an ancestral healing. And then I will say, well, what has made you think that you need that, right? And they'll be, oh, because my friend has told me they had one. And I said, okay, I understand the benefits in that, but let's see what's actually going on for you in your life in this moment and see if really it's an ancestral healing that is needed, or maybe it's past life healing, or maybe it's an inner child or soul retrieval, right? So the way that shamanic work works is really hearing you and seeing you as a whole. What are you presenting as a challenge in your life in this moment? And that's where we start. That's where we work, because I think there's an element to healing work that can get to the point where you're just digging and trying to uncover things that actually aren't needed to be necessarily brought to the surface right now. And actually it's dangerous because it can re-traumatize if you're in a space of your consciousness where you're not ready to actually move through that. So that's what really stood out for me with shamanic work, is we work with what the client is presenting in this moment in time, and that's where we follow the threads, and that's where we move through it. So within my teachings, this was very much what I learned. and understood. And a big part of that is working with instruments or working with tools, because in shamanism we believe everything holds a spirit. So for example, I will use the drum, and I know you touched on sound healing, and so there's many modalities of sound healing, but within my scope, or what I have connected to, is working with the spirit of the drum, the rattles. I use crystals, etc., but these are the instruments that I want to bring in, and the chimes or the bell. And they all have a different quality that I use them for. The drum is inducing a state of relaxation. It's a rhythmic beat that I play to alter one's state of consciousness to be in a place of they can access dream state or their subconscious. And I use the drum to induce this, but also to release stagnant energy or blockages in the body. And the beat is very, and I know you've experienced this, but it's and I listen to, because I'm not playing the drum, the spirit is playing the drum. Yeah. So it's working through me, and I can hear and listen to the different vibrations or the different sounds of the beat that it wants to play, to understand what's going on. So the more I've formed my relationship with the drum, I will hear that when the sound of the drum is like a bang, then there's a block. And then if I'm beating really fast or it's going very fast, it's pulling out and it's releasing. So it's over time I've kind of fine-tuned my relationship and workings with the drum for healing.
That's amazing. And as you say, I have experienced it myself, and it's been really beautiful. I wanted I found it quite interesting, and it's completely gone at this moment in time. That was it. Sorry to come back to it. I think it's quite interesting just to home again in the point of trauma, or not trauma. I think healing never ends. And very much you've kind of connected with that because it's a flow. So we all, despite being a child, and you could have the textbook life, and you're well bred and everything else, we will experience trauma of some sort, whether or not that you're bullied at school, or a presentation didn't go right at work, or you've seen or witnessed an accident. Trauma will always be part of life. And I think that to acknowledge that, and to be able to acknowledge that actually, despite anything, you will experience some trauma, and you go in, well, actually, what does that present to you at this time? Because there are things like the brain's very good at compartmentalizing stuff, boxing it away and go, I can't deal with that now. But then as you become, and I think certainly for me and for other people that we've met, the nudges come back from the universe, because it's going, boom, you need to go and deal with this now to lead to your greatness. And for you to actually, again, like myself, we look at it holistically, I think is really important. And whether or not it's used in this modality or another modality, the key that our work does is actually trying to get people to go look at yourself holistically. You can't just quickly lose some weight and then that's it, fantastic, or put a plaster over it, or I'll go and see a counselor about this, or a healer about that, and then I'm going to be cured. Because it comes in different forms at different times. And I think the beauty of your work is you are holistic, and people will go on that journey with you. If you see what I mean.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So I suppose really you've talked about how you do it, and drums and rattles. Tell us a bit more about, from your client's perspective, what experience made you they feel, how would they respond? What
Mm.
are some sort of typical benefits that you've seen that have come out from it?
Yeah, wonderful question. Thank you. I also just wanted to touch on one thing about your explanation of healing, because I just thought that was really, yeah, really summed it up in such a beautiful way. And it's like the journey of healing is ongoing, and it's to really see it as a spiral of evolution. And sometimes you have to go back in order to move forward. And the more we heal, the more capacity of trauma we're actually able to hold. So that's kind of where the layers go, and then the multi-dimensional aspect of self starts coming in, where you're healing more on the other timelines aspects, right? So it's really to see healing as that journey of having more capacity to hold within yourself. Yeah, I love that. Thank you. So yes, what clients usually experience from a session. So there's I obviously do group sound healing sessions and then one-on-ones, and I think you might touch on this in a little bit, but there is a slight, it's not that there's a slight difference, well there is, but what some clients will experience from a group setting, both really, is a feeling of lightness. So after in a session, it's common that you will experience some sensations inside your body. Like it's actually like you will feel things moving or unbinding or underwining, right? And it's kind of a weird feeling if you've not experienced that before. You may even feel heat or coolness. And it's really breaking up stagnant energy that's in the body. So clients have experienced feeling lighter, feeling more whole, feeling this sense of connectedness, connected to not just themselves and their body. Well, actually, they feel more in their body, but also to the earth and everything around them. So there's kind of this openness that happens, to see with new eyes, and it's a really empowering result that comes from even just one session, because it's kind of takes you to a perspective of where you've chosen something based on an unconscious behavior, or based on maybe a traumatic event that's caused you to hold a belief or hold stagnation. But once there's a feeling of liberation in that, or there's an unbinding, it's like there's an oozing of, oh, okay, I get to make another choice. And that's often what a lot of people experience from sessions, but ultimately the lightness. I've also had some clients say, and I've never taken ayahuasca, but some that have said that a healing with me is very on par with how they felt after an ayahuasca experience. So being on deep medicine, being on because it's taking us to the earth, it's taking us to the connection of that, right? So maybe that's potentially why.
I think, just to home in, from certainly from my personal experience, and obviously at the moment I'm going through a challenging time, and so the same thing that was bugging me when we first met, which and it's only over the past few months that I've kind of like really home in on it, is yes, I'm an athlete. I run, and my body experiences trauma like any athlete. And but there's this sort of nagging, very painful, sort of like what I think's nerve ending pain. And when I was experiencing it from a group setting, which was absolutely beautiful, I certainly attended the day not with not any expectations. I was open. I was like, I have no idea what this is about. Let's just go with it. Feel the fear, do it anyway. But it really eased the pain, and I could feel the shift. And as you said, I just was like, oh, you can take as many drugs as you like to cure a cold or to die down the pain. But actually, this is something where it is so natural that people listen that may be slightly skeptical. I go, don't be, please just go and try it, because certainly in a group setting, that's just the start. And you go, a group setting is reasonably priced, it gives you just that taster, I suppose, to sticking your toe in the water to see what the temperature is. And then it's from that then you go, oh, you've got my attention, and you can individualize that. And I think it's beautiful. But certainly there was a book where the body holds the score.
Yeah.
So anything you experience is being held somewhere in that body. And this is like scientific research. And I was like, yeah. And it just nudges every so often that you come up. And I think that, again, taking this holistic, if you're going to start grounding yourself, this might be a good starting point, just to go to people if they're feeling, well, yeah, I've had this challenge and I've tried that and I've tried that, but I still think something's missing. I tend to find, or I have found, that we bring it together, and this is just the start. And then we work, and you work to go, right, we'll do this. How does it feel? Perhaps, think about this, because obviously we know lots of other people that may be able to help other specific causes. But I think it's absolutely beautiful, the fact that very much with your group sessions, it's just bringing that heart center, that energy into your heart, into your mind, and into your body, just to go, what does that feel like? What does that feel like?
That's beautiful. Yeah, so true. It's to come with an open mind to this work. And you're not going to not experience something. That's for sure. Because like, when I talk about being with the drum, yes, but I'm also opening myself as the vessel for spirit to work through me. So why, and then you've also experienced this, but I will have channeled chants that will come through, because I'm working in the realms of all the beings that are here to support us in this earthly existence, right? So that's not just mine, that's everyone that's in the room. That if I'm working one-on-one with clients, that's their guides, that's their helpers, let's say, in the spirit and energetic beings that we're working with. So they are all coming through to speak, to channel, to talk to. And so the chants that come through, or the frequencies of the sound, they're actually tapping into everybody's individual cellular programming to revitalize that. So when we've experienced trauma, or we have a lot of low vibration, right? That feeling, this sense of, you were explaining there, feeling lost, feeling this lack of sense of life, something missing, right? It's in a cellular level. There is the cells, like it's not like they're dying, but they're like they're covered, or they're not in their full vibration, or they're not in their full vitality. So with the sound of the drum, with the chants that come through, with the frequencies that are sounding, it's actually touching you on a cellular level to revitalize those cells. So that's another thing that clients will experience, is feeling more energized, like a renewed sense of life has come to play. And that's really why, because it's working on that cellular level.
Just, sorry, random sort of probably off the tangent question, but don't you find it exhausting? How do you look after yourself when you're doing a group setting? Because what I'm hearing is you're getting all these different, like, archangels, so to speak, that are associated with each person. Potentially all these energies coming and speaking through you. You're trying to then do between 10, 20 people to try and get them balanced and energized. I suppose, how does that make you feel at the end of it? What sort of self-care do you have?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think, like, in that moment, it's sometimes it's better doing a group setting for me, because it's the same amount of energy it would take to do a one-on-one, and more people are benefiting in that space, right? So in a way, it's actually really beautiful to do that. But I have to get out of my own way, to allow that to happen. So afterwards, when I come back, like my personality, my sense of self, the Francesca, right, in this identity, I have to ground myself, because I can feel very sometimes if I do healings, I can feel very buzzed up, or I'll get very energized, and I will, I'm a little bit high, let's say. So I have to root down and ground myself. I will use my own sound frequencies and tap back into my own vibration. But really, what's important is taking deep breaths, and then I re-anchor myself, is something that I call. So I will draw in energy from the earth, draw in energy from the heavens, and I will center it back in my heart to come back into my center. So that's usually the self-care that I take. I drink a lot of tea. Tea is a big part of my practice because it's a very grounding herb, but it's also a balancing herb. So the Camellia sinensis plant of tea holds both yang and yin properties. So it's one of the most balancing plants that you could drink.
So sorry, just to quickly digress again. So this is not like your English breakfast tea. So, sorry, because most of it, we go, the good British is, oh, I've got to have an English cup of tea. So I'm like, okay, so if to say for myself or to one of the listeners, you're talking about this tea, how would we go about getting the tea? Or is it something yourself?
So I like to use different herbs, like to work with them as plant allies to help support. So tea, it is an English brew. Comes from the same plant necessarily. It's just there's different grades. Yeah. So if you have your Yorkshire, you've got your Tetleys, whatever. These teas are like the last kind of dust particles of the tea plant that I would potentially drink, for example. So it's not that it's bad necessarily. It's just a lower grade. But the where I get my tea from is Taiwan, from China. So it's the proper tea leaves. So they're quite big, and then I'll brew that in a teapot or as such. But it can be any plant that you're kind of called to working with as an ally. Each plant or each herb in itself holds different qualities. So rose, for example, would be a really beautiful one to work with for heart opening and self-love and self-compassion. And when I say work with it, it's more just like, if you have your cup of tea, and we're going to just, instead of just drinking the tea like it's just something to do and you kind of habitually do it, why don't you take a moment as you're drinking that tea to go, I'm just going to be present with this tea, because in this moment I'm doing this, I'm drinking this. So what if I held it with two hands? What if I held it to my heart? What if I drank it from heart to mouth in this kind of ritualistic, ceremonial way, and just watch how it shifts things from just simply a normal act? It's actually bringing ritual and ceremony into your everyday. And really, spiritual practices can be this simple. I think we overcomplicate it. Really, we do.
It does. And this is like so fascinating, because obviously we've started off with sort of like the healing and how you use sound. And we've talked about holistic, because the sound actually for an individual person like myself just started to open me up. We're now going, oh, okay, what else can I do to maintain that? And I think that's quite important, is the maintenance. And you're saying like rose tea for the heart, which I've now noted and we'll be going to have a look at. So it's again, everything you're doing, as you said at the start, is taking it from the earth and bringing it to you to the center to holistically heal yourself and to really release yourself so you can be great, and whatever that greatness looks like. And so I think it's very beautiful.
Yes, it's a way of life. It's remembering this as a way of life, and that everything is sacred, and to actually live life as sacred. That's the remembrance.
Yeah.
In presence. So the more ways you can cultivate presence, like I was sharing simply with drinking your cup of tea or maybe eating a meal, the more ways you can cultivate that sense of presence to really be and meet yourself in that now with what you're tasting, what you're seeing. Like, the more you can cultivate presence in your everyday, that's what's going to bring much more ease and balance to every moment. Yeah.
I mean, just sort of like bringing it and summarizing again, we've talked about you use different sounds stuff, and actually you do a group setting, which is a start, and then individual, and you work with that individual, and then obviously your tool set that you give them afterwards is being the present, living well, and really, and I think presence is something again that is a process that we have to really consciously do. Because people say you're present and go, yeah, but your phone's just bleeped, so you've looked over there, so you're not fully present. You're not fully present with your feelings or yourself. And one thing I do with my family is I'm trying to get them to think about the gratitude for food. We're going to grow our own squashes this year and courgettes, fingers crossed, because I am really not a great grower of things. But I am really trying to cultivate them to go back to like our ancestors, which is probably the same as you, where you go, well, where does food come from? Or where does fasting come from? Well, there used to be hunters. For days, you would go without food or water until you had your feast. And you can take from animals, back, or fish, or berries and fruits, and really trying to bring the whole fast-paced thinking back round to Mother Earth.
Yeah.
That's what you've got there all the time for you. Thank God that you've got your universe, or the divine, and whatever you do, that you've got Mother Earth that is nourishing you, and you're bringing all of that together. I suppose one thing that's kind of cropping up is this, to me, feels, and I'm sensing to yourself that is applicable to everybody, but are there any sort of circumstances that you've come across where you go, really, we can't do this at this moment in time with a particular client, or you wouldn't recommend sound healing?
It's important to have an understanding of a background, especially if it's a one-on-one session. But no, I haven't had any. There's not any real contraindications with it. It's if there is a rare case of sound-induced epilepsy, that is very rare, but that is probably one thing I would say, yeah, maybe let's not do that, or maybe not use the drum, because that is quite a loud activating sound. So and I have had some experience of people feeling the drum being quite a triggering sound for them, like at the beginning or first time that they've ever experienced it. It can be a little bit unsettling, because especially if there is a lot of felt trauma in the body, and loud sounds can trigger certain things. So yeah, I think it's good to be aware of that, of the background of trauma, but in all of it. But otherwise, no, I wouldn't say there's any other things I've come across.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And I suppose the one other thing that's just triggered me, and sorry again, because obviously digressing potentially, is one of my very close friends, she's pregnant. And I suppose obviously whatever the baby hears helps. So do you treat a lot of people that are, like, a lot of women that are pregnant? What's sort of like the benefits that they feel? Is it the benefits for the mother, or is benefits for the baby? Is it holistically? Just an intriguing question. Don't have to answer
Yes. Oh yes, babies love that in the womb, right? Like they're hearing their mother's heartbeat that sounds similar to the sound of the drum, right? They're hearing the boom boom, the boom boom. And even when we experience hearing the drum, it will take us back as that reminder to us in the womb, right? So there is this kind of sense of safety that we're feeling. So yeah, I've done a lot of women with that are pregnant, and it helps relieve their stress. It helps, again, feel the lightness, and they're bringing such divine codes for their babies to kind of come into this world. So no, I think that's really beautiful. The only thing I wouldn't do with pregnancy is any clearing as such, or removing, especially within that area, because you just don't know. That could have some effect, but not just to receive a sound healing. No, that's fine.
So I suppose really, what I tend to ask, moving towards the end of it, of the interview and a chat with yourself, it's not really an interview, it's actually just chat, which is beautiful, which is why I love what I do.
Yeah.
Is there anything, I suppose, within your own heart that's really coming up that you go, we haven't talked about, that you really want to share with everybody?
I feel like, and my heart's kind of fluttering as I want to say this, but I just want to bring ease to listeners. And it's almost like taking a huge deep breath and just exhale and go, it's okay. Yeah, I think when we're in the fast-paced world, and I know you've spoken about this a lot, we can get so caught up in who we have to become, what we have to achieve, and it takes away our experience of living.
Yeah.
You know, we're focused so heavily in the future, and it's like, how can you, if you cultivate this sense of trust and connection to everything, rather than just, what you've been taught and what you've been told is important to have to succeed in life, but just take a moment to zoom out and look at everything and go, what am I grateful for right now? And actually take a moment to focus more on what it is that you do have, rather than focusing on what you don't have. That is really the key message I really want to share, because when we are being in a space of abundance and thanking and appreciating for everything that we do have, it brings more. That's the funny thing, right? Like, we think like, well, I don't have this and I don't have that. But if you're constantly in that space of lack or don't have, then that's what you're also creating.
That's beautiful. And I suppose really, and you might have some pearls of wisdom, how the heck do you teach this at schools? Because, the mindfulness, the statistics of how many children have mental health issues.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm a parent, I've got 2 boys, they are neurodiverse. And I've said to them, and I say time and time again, I don't care what your results are, just make sure that you've turned up, you've tried your best. I said, because at the end of the day, the minimum that I'm asking for is maths and English. The rest of it, you can work it out. But more importantly, is about loving yourself and being able to talk to others. And what you said is to be grateful, and they look at the other kids that, are on their game console that could be for hours, where I'm like, no, let's go out for a walk, let's go and connect with nature, let's go and cook on an open fire. But it's, how do you bring that message of, instead of getting in this rat race, whether or not you're a high-powered executive or you're a stay-at-home mum or you're just starting out, how can you just really home in that message to yourself, the listeners now, but radiating that out to others, to then radiate out to the world, to say, just be present with yourself and grateful for now.
Yeah, it's true. The systems that are in place are not supportive of, what's really truly needed, and do not meet the individual needs of everybody. So yeah, I appreciate you talking about the schooling system and what needs to change in that. But to bring I think what you can do is, as a mother, or as if you've got kids and you're trying to bring that energy in, it's more about how you can embody and hold that. So the more work that you do for yourself and on yourself, you are able to radiate that out, right? So it's actually about taking care of yourself and your needs. And a lot of it, maybe you don't even know what that is, but how can you begin to explore that? Because you cannot be an example for somebody else if you're not being a model for that yourself, you know? And I think this is what happens a lot with kind of where disrespect comes in, because it's like, you know, I'm going to talk from my own experience, but you know, I'll have my parents and they're trying to tell me to do something, and you're like, well, I would much listen to you if you were the embodiment or modeling that and walking that truth, rather than telling me how to be and what to do. And I think this is really the way of shifting everything. It's like, instead of being the preacher, it's being the teacher by modeling that and living that. Yeah. So how to cultivate more presence. And I think we just need to just bring it and scale it down, and just share what I was saying earlier. Make it simpler. Spiritual practices or present practices do not have to be, oh, I need an hour of my time. I need, you know, when we start to think of that, then we're like, automatically we go into, haven't got time for that, can't do that, you know, because all of the fear programming starts coming in. Because so how can you bring it more into your, look at your daily life and your routine and just scale it down? So if you're, like I said, everyone eats, everyone drinks. How can you just, okay, make a conscious effort to go phones away in this moment. I'm going to focus in on every taste that I can taste with my food or with my drink. How can you move your body more? And this doesn't have to be going to the gym. It doesn't have, how can you put some music on in your kitchen when you're cooking? So you could be doing two things at once, moving your body and cook. Like, you know, how can we be more resourceful and use our time that we have, but still bring something? I mean, moving the body, dance is really such a powerful way to shift energy in the body, and we forget how easy that is. Like, to just put on your favorite tune, even if you're just doing this, you're bopping, but you're being present. Anything that allows you to be in a state of joy and presence and flow, where you're not thinking about the future and you're not thinking about the past, just for that moment. That's what the presence is.
Beautiful. Right. So thank you very much for coming onto the show. I hope my listeners have found this useful as much as I found it, and I suppose enlighten something inside them to see and explore how shamanic healing can help them. I will include your contact details in our show notes. And obviously my website will be there, so people can sign up to email, because obviously I work with my partners and you know, can explore that way. So thank you. If my listeners liked the episode, please be sure to subscribe to the show, share and follow us on social media. As always, I thank and I have lots of love and gratitude for everybody listening.